bracket, feel free to argue. Everybody enjoying the Israeli genocide against the Palestinians? It's been an amazing couple of weeks watching as everybody knuckles under to the Israelis here. I mean, we had that resolution that was passed unanimously in the Senate. Only 5 people voted against a similar resolution in the House. I guess the mainstream media isn't really, covering anything except saying that Israel is 100% entitled to do whatever the hell they want to the Palestinians because, they fire those rockets every once in a while. It's actually been really amazing kind of watching the reaction to this. And then, also reading outside media from, outside this country and just seeing that there's no similarity between the coverages. So one thing I'd like to do is just kind of to give you an idea of like how much shit Israel's been up to. I just gathered together some random headlines off of Democracy Now! Just for the first 4 days of this week. See what you think of this. Israel admits error in bombing UN school. Gaza residents say cemeteries are running out of space. Israel blocks aid ship for Gaza from Iran. Journalists decry Gaza media killings and ban. The International Red Cross reports that there is no safe place in Gaza for civilians. UN Human Rights Council condemns Israel. Israeli shelling hits media building. Israeli rights groups call for war crimes investigation. Israel accused of using experimental dime weapons in Gaza. Thousands flee homes as death toll passes 1,000. Second Free Gaza ship abandons aid mission after Israeli threats. Israel shells crowded hospital and UN compound. Of course, this doesn't even really get into my favorite one, which was the whole debacle with the UN Security Council resolution that Condi Rice wrote and lobbied for and then had to back off of because Ehud Olmert called George Bush and told Bush that he didn't want us voting for it. So Bush turned around and called Rice and made her abstain. So it went through 14-0 with us abstaining in the Security Council. But the real problem comes the next day when Olmert goes in front of all the journalists in his country and basically just brags about how he bent George Bush to his will. Check out this quotation from Olmert. He, meaning Bush, gave an order to the Secretary of State, and she did not vote in favor of it. A resolution she cooked up, phrased, organized, and maneuvered for. She was left pretty shamed, abstaining from voting on the resolution. Well, I guess she wasn't the only one, eh? Hey, can I get a kiss? Even better was Bush's mouth of Sarin for the day, Tony Fratto, saying that there were inaccuracies in Olmert's account, without actually being able to say what those inaccuracies were, which sounds a lot like there weren't any inaccuracies and they just can't say that. The second thing that I'd like to do is I saw a really good interview with Helen Thomas, the person who's been the White House reporter for forever. She's ancient and she's wonderful. She's like one of the only people who in the middle, before Bush started getting unpopular again, was actually asking any hard questions. I mean, everybody else was just rolling over for him, and she had some really interesting things to say. So I'm going to play a few clips from the interview that I found particularly telling. The first one was when Amy Goodman talked to her a bit about Israel policy.
That's what you wrote in this last column, which is called History Cannot Save Him.
Well, I wrote that President Bush is passing on to President-elect Obama 2 wars and an economic debacle. I call it a depression, and he is arming Israel against the Palestinians in every way in Gaza.
Do you expect to see a change of policy, Helen Thomas?
It's an unconscionable legacy.
Do you expect to see a change of policy, for example, on Israel and the occupied territories?
No.
I think her just saying no and stopping like that is very telling, because you can see that she doesn't even feel that it's anything that needs to be explained. Of course there isn't going to be any change in policy. I mean, Amy Goodman, of course, asks her why and prompts her, and she just basically says, like every other president, he's made lots of promises to Israel, and for some reason he feels he needs to keep these promises. Unlike, the promises to everyone else, which I'm sure he's going to feel totally fine about breaking. The second piece that I thought is very related to this, it's just a tiny little segment. It's kind of what her feelings about the Obama presidency are.
I was, of course, entranced with this I have a dream, and it's amazing that I think maybe this dream is actually coming true, although I do think that President Obama to-be needs a lot more courage.
And this final segment is probably my favorite because it's just her laying it on the line about what's gone wrong with journalism in this country. Later on, too, she also says something really positive, because Amy Goodman says, what would you tell a journalism student who is wanting to join the profession now? And she gives this wonderful answer about, how journalism, basically saying everything that journalism should be. But in terms of what journalism is, this is what she has to say.
What is your assessment of the White House press corps? Has it changed over the decades, and what did you think of the White House press corps that covered all of the press covering President Bush?
I think they lost their guts after 9/11. No one wanted to ask penetrating questions for fear of being called un-American, unpatriotic. And I think their publishers, wherever they are, maybe Wall Street and so forth, were saying, lay off. We're all Americans and we have to stick together no matter what. So I don't think reporters should, obviously the ideal is to seek the truth, no matter where the chips fall.
This old lady has got more balls than every other guy in the press corps. It's just amazing. And it's a very interesting interview. There's lots of other, and she's very generous actually to the other reporters. She says, oh, well, I understand the nostalgia and everybody's writing about his legacy. But then again, when Amy asks what she would have done in that situation if Bush would have deigned to call on her, which of course he didn't, she says, oh, well, I would have asked him a news question. She could give a shit about nostalgia and giving him an excuse to apologize or engage in self-delusion. Maybe we'll talk about that in his final press conference at some other point. But generally speaking, though, she nailed it right on the head. She knows what's wrong.
I think they lost their guts